Stillness, the gateway to the absolute inner realm. Amidst the noise of the modern world, where people are immersed in social media, overwhelmed by a relentless stream of news, and burdened by the unending demands of productivity, few remember the value of silence. In the fleeting moment when everything pauses, no one calling our name, nothing urging us forward, we are finally able to face our inner reality. Stillness is not emptiness. It is the deepest form of presence, the dwelling place of the pure spirit, the fertile ground from which all flowers of wisdom bloom. From east to west, from the Buddha to Socrates, from Lao Tzu to Marcus Aurelius. Those who have seen the true nature of life all agree only in stillness does the inner energy begin to awaken. It is this state of tranquil egolessness that serves as the key to unlock the divine treasure within each person. Creativity, the will to renew, the power to stand firm against the storms of fate. And so begins the journey not outward, but inward. Part 1. Stillness as the source of wisdom, from Socrates to the Buddha. In ancient Greek philosophy, the understanding of oneself was considered the prerequisite to understanding the universe. At the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, the famous inscription, Gnothi Seauten, know thyself, stood as a sacred command. But how does one come to know oneself amidst the chaos of emotions, desires, and fears? Socrates offered no doctrine. Instead, he asked questions, and then he listened in silence. In the dialogues recorded by Plato, Socrates never rushed to answer. He allowed his interlocutors to entangle themselves in their own contradictions, then remained silent like a clear mirror reflecting the truth. Socrates understood that truth does not arise from accumulated knowledge, but from the stripping away of illusions. Stillness is the flame that purifies crude ideas. Only in stillness can the soul hear itself. Just as a body of water can only reflect the sky when it ceases to ripple. While Socrates guided others to truth through dialogue, the Buddha Siddhartha Gautama chose absolute silence. After 6 years of asceticism in the forest and countless debates with sages, he finally sat beneath the Bodhi tree, no longer speaking. And in that stillness, he attained enlightenment. The Buddha did not look outward for the path. He turned inward to liberate himself from suffering. When the stream of thoughts ceased, when the mind clung to nothing, the light of wisdom arose like dawn from the darkness. In the Dhammapada, it is written, no one can save you but yourself. Train your mind as a goldsmith works gold. Gold only appears once all impurities are removed, and so it is with wisdom. It is fascinating that despite different expressions, east and west, from the Buddha to Socrates, share the same truth. Stillness is the condition for enlightenment. No truth can touch a noisy mind. No inner power can emerge from a scattered cell. Stillness is not just the absence of sound. It is the absence of inner disturbance. It is the moment when energy arises, when wisdom is poured forth from the deepest level of being. Part 2. When the mind is still, the world transforms. Throughout history, those who shaped humanity's turning points were not always the strongest, wealthiest, or most powerful. They were often the ones capable of standing firm in stillness. Alexander the Great once had an advisor named Diogenes, a cynic philosopher who lived in the city square, slept in a ceramic tub, and cared nothing for fame. When Alexander came to him and asked, "Is there anything I can give you?" Diogenes simply replied, "Yes, step aside, you're blocking my sunlight." Within what might seem an arrogant remark lay a mind unshaken by imperial power. Only someone of such unshakable presence could move Alexander to say, "If I were not Alexander, I would want to be Diogenes, the one unmoved by fame or fortune, the one steady as stone amidst life's waves, that is the one who possesses a power greater than armies." Seneca, the famous Stoic philosopher of Rome, once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." He knew that most suffering stems from the mind being pulled by imagination, fear, and regret, and thus the only path to freedom is to maintain inner equilibrium. When sentenced to death due to political conspiracy, Seneca did not resist or weep. He entered a warm bath, opened his veins, and departed life in calmness. His executioners could not touch his mind. He had long severed all ties to fear. Stillness is not the absence of turmoil, but standing firm amid turmoil. There is a paradox. Those who speak the least, who act the least impulsively, often have the greatest impact. Consider the Greek warrior, Odysseus. When faced with the chaos of the sea and the cunning of the gods, he did not react immediately. He observed. He kept his mind from being swept away by emotion when his companions rebelled, when he was tempted by Circe when faced with the siren's seductive song. Odysseus bound himself to the mast, refusing to follow temptation. That act symbolizes supreme inner discipline. He returned to Ithaca not by brute strength, but by the power of self-mastery. In contrast, Achilles, who let his rage guide him, ended in tragedy. This shows that the ability to stop, to refrain from acting, is sometimes the most powerful act of all. We begin to see that stillness is not passive. It is the highest form of action. But what happens when the mind comes to a complete halt, no longer clinging to anything? Is that a useless void, or the foundation of divine strength? Let us now enter part 3, egolessness and the return to the true self. Part 3, egolessness and the return to the true self. In Greek mythology, Orpheus possessed a voice so moving, it stirred the heavens, compelling trees, rivers, and mountains to pause in rapture. When his beloved wife Eurydice died, Orpheus descended into Hades, using music to plead with the god of death for her return. Hades agreed on one condition during their ascent back to the world of the living. Orpheus must not look back. He walked in darkness, silently, leading his wife, who followed just behind. But as the faint light of the surface flickered at the mouth of the cave, doubt and fear crept in. Is she truly still behind me? Am I walking alone through a phantom? He turned and lost her forever. That tale is a profound metaphor for the inner journey. When fear, doubt, and the need for control seep in, we lose that which we hold most dear. That act of turning back is the betrayal of faith in stillness, in Wu Wei. Egolessness does not require verification. It simply is. Western philosophy has brushed this state as well. Plotinus, founder of Neoplatonism, wrote of the soul reaching the absolute, when the soul ceases all motion, when it no longer thinks, no longer desires, no longer says, I, then it becomes united with the One. This union is not a dramatic experience. It is the vanishing of the experiencer. When there is no I, no mine, all suffering, all limitation dissolves. Picture a wave on the ocean as a wave. It has a name, a form, a beginning, and an end. But when it melts back into the sea, it returns to its essence, water. There is no longer this wave or that wave, only the pure ocean. Socrates, father of Western philosophy, met death without pleading or resistance. He said, death is not an evil. Perhaps it is a transformation, a dreamless sleep, or a journey where the soul meets the truth. When his students wept, he smiled and said, you weep not for me, but for your own feet. This is true egolessness. He was no longer Socrates, a name, a body, a status, but a stream of wisdom flowing beyond the duality of life and death. Prometheus, the Titan, who dared steal fire from Zeus to give to mankind, was punished. Each day an eagle devoured his liver, which grew back nightly, a cycle of endless torment. Here fire represents knowledge awakening. But Prometheus suffered because he acted from ego-seeking glory, defying the divine. His tale reveals that knowledge, without egolessness, brings relentless pain. Only when wisdom becomes selfless does it liberate the soul. Thus, in the egoless state, man not only sheds suffering, but becomes invulnerable. Yet to dwell in this state requires one essential condition, a true understanding of the nature of all things. This is what we will now explore in Part 4, Wisdom and the Vision that Pierces Reality. Part 5, Stillness, the primal home of the soul. In ancient Greece, the wise often retreated to high mountains, not to escape life, but to seek the voice within stillness, not silence of the ears, but the quieting of the mind. When thought ceases, space opens. When the I no longer dominates consciousness, returns to its original state, pure empty lucid. Plato wrote in Phaedrus, "The soul can only hear the divine when it has silenced all noise of desire." Stillness is not achieved through force or effort. It arrives as a gift when we simply stop. Pythagoras, one of Greece's greatest sages, required his students to remain completely silent for 5 years before being allowed to ask questions. He called it mauna, a practice of mental discipline that would later appear in Buddhism and Hinduism. Why? Because, as Pythagoras taught, as long as the mouth speaks, the mind is scattered. And when the mind is restless, truth cannot dwell. In that stillness, the student gradually hears an inner voice, a sound not heard with the ears, but with awareness. For Pythagoras, stillness was the gateway to ultimate understanding. Eckhart Tolle recounts that one night, in a deep depression, he said to himself, "I can't live with myself any longer." Then came a moment of awakening. If I cannot live with myself, who is the I and who is myself? In that instant, the false self dissolved, leaving only pure presence without thought, without past, without future. Only now, from that stillness, he lived in deep peace for years eventually, writing The Power of Now. Stillness is not merely the absence of noise. It is the ground from which all sound arises. Imagine an ancient oak standing in a vast field. Winds blow, clouds drift, birds call, but the oak remains unmoved. It does not resist, it does not yearn, it does not reject. It simply is. Stillness is like that. It does not deny movement, but it itself is never shaken. You need not meditate for 10 years or climb the Himalayas to find stillness. It has always been there, waiting for your return. In the moment you stop resisting, it opens. The philosopher Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb you, but your judgments about them." And in stillness, those judgments dissolve. Stillness is the soil where wisdom takes root. And when stillness blossoms, you enter a new realm, no longer led by fear, desire, or ignorance. From here, a new life begins, but such a life must be guided by one eternal compass. Part 6. The Inner World. The Soul's Compass. Imagine yourself as a ship upon the sea. Storms rage, clouds thicken, a distant lighthouse calls. But if you rely only on what's outside, you may lose your way. But with a true compass, you will always find direction, regardless of the chaos. So it is in life: opinions, pressure, judgments, noise. They are waves crashing around you. Without a strong inner world, you'll be swept away. Socrates wrote no books and left no doctrines. Yet he gave us one of the greatest teachings. Gnothise avton, know thyself. To know yourself is not to memorize your biography or habits. It is to understand the essence behind every action, emotion, and longing, the core of the soul itself. Socrates believed all true knowledge begins within. Without self-awareness, even the noblest act may veer off course. In Homer's Odyssey, Ulysses Odysseus wishes to hear the deadly song of the siren sea spirits who lure sailors to destruction. Knowing the danger, he plugs his crew's ears and binds himself to the mast, forbidding them to release him no matter how he begs. This is a perfect image of inner strength. Ulysses doesn't avoid temptation. He meets it head-on, fully prepared, grounded in deep self-understanding. To have inner stability is not to be immune to temptation, but to remain unmoved by it. Viktor Frankl, author of Man's Search for Meaning, survived Auschwitz. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our freedom and growth." He lost family, dignity, health, but he did not lose his inner world. In the hell of man, he preserved a heaven within. Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, stripped of all rights, yet he emerged without hate. "I realized if I carried hate out of that prison, I would still be imprisoned." His inner world became a light, not only for himself, but for a nation. 5. The inner compass is not an escape from life. It is the key to living it truly. A person with inner strength does not retreat from the world, but enters it with a heart like the wind and a mind like stone. They are not swayed by trends, nor quick to react, nor fooled by temporary fame or failure. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditation, "A rock in the sea, the waves crash then fall away. a still mind amid turbulence. The inner world is not born from luck. It is forged like a sword in fire through practice. Daily observation. Spend a few moments each day watching your thoughts and emotions without judgment, only awareness. Inner journaling, like Marcus Aurelius. Write for yourself. See how you change day by day. Voluntary challenges. Don't wait for life to test you. Train through small acts. Silence for a day, walking without distraction, delaying reaction in conflict. When your inner world becomes your compass, you can no longer lose your way. In the loneliest desert or stormiest sea, you know the path home. And from that place, a final and highest quality emerges. Conclusion. The state of stillness, the highest art of existence. Stillness is not an escape from sound or events. It is a state of absolute presence, unmoved, unshaken, untouched by what comes from the outside. Amid the noisy crowds, the still one can still smile. Amid painful failure, the still one does not collapse. Amid glorious success, the still one remains humble. Stillness is the empty space where the soul settles. Wisdom is born and unconditional love can survive. Like the silent sky that lets birds fly, like the deep sea reflecting moonlight. Only in stillness can one truly see the essence of things and of oneself. In stillness, the poet pens immortal verses. In stillness, the king grants pardon instead of execution. In stillness, a mother forgives the flaws of her imperfect child. In stillness, the artist rediscovers inspiration after a storm of despair. Everything begins not with a sound, but with a pause. We do not live to attain stillness as if it were a distant goal. We live in stillness through each breath, each gaze, each mindful action. Stillness does not promise a life without turmoil, but it gives you a soul unbroken by turmoil. You may lose money, fame, love, reputation, or status. But if you preserve your stillness, you've lost nothing of true value. Conversely, if you lose stillness, then even with the whole world in your hands, you are still sinking. Choose stillness like Ulysses, who bound himself to resist the siren's deadly song. Choose stillness like Marcus Aurelius, who wrote nightly reflections, guarding his soul from the seduction of power. Choose stillness like Mandela, who forgave his captors and emerged with an open heart. Because stillness is a prayer without words. It is wisdom without a diploma. It is love without promises. It is invincibility without an army. The seeker of stillness need not abandon life. They need only pause for a moment each day in anger, in applause, or in the ache of loneliness and ask, am I living from the deepest part of myself? If the answer is yes, then you have found what generations of sages, kings, poets, and philosophers once sought. A still soul in a turbulent world that is ultimate freedom.